Welcome back. I hope you had a great weekend. It is Monday, February 7th of 2022, and we are going to take a look at the markets. Bitcoin and cryptocurrency had a big day today, everything green pretty much across the board in crypto land. And one of the first days in a while that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency have decoupled from the stock market. So let's take a look, see what's going on. The stock markets were Dow Jones a little bit flat today, S&P down just about 0.37, NASDAQ down about 0.5%. And as we said, the cryptocurrency markets and Bitcoin were up today, pretty much all green across the board. Everything is up 5–10%, and some coins are up even more than that, some of the altcoins, but Bitcoin up 6% on the day today. So let's take a look at the charts here in a second, but some of the things to think about in the headlines that we're looking for, of course, inflation is on the minds of all of the central banks and policymakers around the world. And the question is going to be, what is the Fed going to do? And as interest rates are very pertinent to the markets, including cryptocurrency markets, because of the credit markets and the ability to borrow money and purchase cryptocurrencies and stocks and pushing investors into those markets, we have to really keep an eye on what the Fed is going to do. And right now, a lot of people, a lot of investors, a lot of funds, a lot of analysts are expecting a 0.5 point rate hike, which would lead to a little bit of a reaction from the market. So we'll just have to wait and see how the inflation data prints this week. There's a lot of speculation that inflation data is going to run at an all-time high. Some people are talking about 5 hikes, maybe 7 hikes as wages increase across the board, which are driving costs up across the board. So we have to really watch what the Fed is talking about and what they're going to do and how the markets react to that. So inflation is top of the mind for everybody, and supply chain issues continue to be front and center, and supply chain issues, things like that. So we'll just have to see what the Fed decides to do, how aggressive they're going to come out, and what they are seeing. So Bitcoin and cryptocurrency are up on the day today. This is the hourly chart, and this is going back to February 3rd, where that $36,000 low came in, $36,000 low back earlier this month. And we are up from that point on Bitcoin alone about 22%. So not a bad little hike on Bitcoin. We're kind of plugging along here. And then all of a sudden on the 4th, we had a little bump, and then Bitcoin had another little bump, became a stable coin here for a while, where the debate was, is this going to be a BART pattern that was going to play out and drop, or were we going to see continuation to the upside? So where have we seen something like this before on Bitcoin? Again, this is the hourly chart. Let's roll over here to last September, October, before the all-time high. And you can see on the hourly, this price action looks real similar to the price action that we are dealing with right here. And if you look at this, this is kind of where we're at right now, where we had Bitcoin was kind of bouncing around the bottom here. It had a little bit more up and down. Had that first level up, had the stable coin action, then had another little level up. So it seems like we're kind of right here in this area in terms of price action. It's not quite as linear or vertical over here as it is today and what's going on right now, but it kind of looks like it's following the same path where you get these quick vertical rises, a little bit of stabilization, vertical rise, vertical rise. So as you look at it, on what we're seeing here the last few days, and especially over the weekend, we're just bouncing around, then all of a sudden, bam, vertical rise, a little bit of a plateau, vertical rise, had a bit of a drop, vertical rise, and we have another little drop going on now. So the question is, where is this going to settle in? Are we going to see continuation? And what is this going to look like? And we've been following that thesis, talking about the local bottom that we were calling back on January 14th, that I talked about on January 14th, where I called for a $36,000 range low for this little range that we're in right now for this local bottom. We wicked down to 33,000, but we closed at 35, which is what I was targeting as a closing bottom, not wicks, but the number that we actually closed on. And then we've been looking for this double bottom before continuation, because a lot of times in Bitcoin's history, it wants to have a double bottom before continuation, like we saw back in the June, July timeframe. And then we saw most recently here in September, this double bottom. And this range here kind of looks very similar to what we're doing right now. And there has been a double bottom. It just turned out a little bit higher. So this was the $35,000 bottom. Back where we were talking about right up in here is that January 14th area where I put the video out about the bottoming, where Bitcoin would bottom at that price, the 36,000 range, and then double, and then put in the double bottom and then move into a retracement around the 14th of February. So we're a little ahead of schedule on that. What's today? The 7th. So Bitcoin is running 7 days ahead of schedule on that double tap, double bottom that I was looking for before retracement. So it has started the retracement process. And the question is it going to follow something similar to this? And if you look at what's happened, had that first leg up with a little bit of a stall, then a second leg up. And right now had the first leg up, a little bit of stall, second leg up. So the question is it going to continue on, and where is it going to run to? So if you look at the history of Bitcoin and what it typically does, is it will typically retrace to a 618 or a 702 retracement level. And if you take that right here, it's what we've been targeting. Your, hang on one second. Did that backwards again. The 618 to the 702 retracement level would be like we've been targeting in that somewhere, the 0.5 is coming in around 50,000. So the 618 is right around 55,000. The 702 is right around 58,000 right now from the wick of the peak range high to the wick of the range low. If you took it on a closing basis, it'd be a little bit different. But generally most analysts are going to take it from the wicks. And but if you take it from the close, it changes it a little bit, where you're looking at 57,000 for the 702, you're looking at 55 for the 618, and you're looking at 50 for the 0.5. So we haven't even gotten close to the 0.5 yet. So the theory was, and the thesis is, that we were going to have a double bottom and then move into more of a retracement. Let's get rid of these lines right here real quick. And we'll go ahead and make sure that we're clear, because some people have asked, am I looking for another test at this bottom here? And at this point right now, I would say no. We might have a little bit of a pullback before continuation, but I'm not looking for this to completely roll over and retest the bottom. Right now, I feel like this was the double bottom tap right here. And the market makers stepped in, large investors stepped in, pulled price up. And we'll look at some of the catalysts for this and why this is happening. And now retail is starting to follow. We saw Charles Payne of Fox Business come out and say he finally bought Bitcoin for the first time. So he stepped in right here at this level. So a lot of retail is stepping in at this level in terms of that retracement. But what we've been talking about that we're looking at now is the potential for this to kind of maybe come into here a little bit and then roll on up to potentially test this area up here to that level that we're talking about of the 0.618 to 702. And then this is the area, depending on what's going on with the Fed, economic environment, conflict around the world, just all of the things that can happen, would be the point where it's either going to break through the 702 and continue on, or it's going to reject the 702 rollover and then continue into a longer consolidation and come down and potentially then test not this local bottom that we called for, that I called for back on January 14th. I was talking about a local bottom right here before a retracement. But if it rolls over and gets rejected at the 618, 702 retracement level and does not break through that for continuation, then I would expect it to roll over and test the macro cycle low that we have right now, which is 30,000. So right now our market structure low right now is 30,000 from last July. And previously, January of 2021, June, July of 2021, that is our market structure macro low that I do not expect that we would go below unless there was a serious economic issue out there, some sort of a black swan, another pandemic, world conflict that looks really, really bad. Investors get scared, start pulling money off the table. The Fed does something really stupid and comes out and just raises rates, cuts off bond purchasing and unloads the balance sheet all at the same time. Don't expect they would do that, but you never know what they're seeing and what they're going to do. But that's kind of what we're looking at right there. So right now I'm expecting obviously a little bit of bumpiness here, but I'm expecting this to kind of continue on this into the retracement that we're in. We're seeing altcoins go a little bit. Could this be a bull trap? Absolutely. Could the whole theory be wrong? Absolutely. What would invalidate that would be if we turn around, we've got this market structure that we're trying to break through right here, where that was support over in this area. If we take a look at where Bitcoin has been, where it was support here, and where we had Bitcoin had a little bit of resistance there, a little bit of resistance there. Right here in this area, a little bit of resistance there, a little bit of support resistance there, same thing here. So kind of running all the way across this line here, you can see that that's been major market structure across the board for Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin can break through this level, then you'll see continuation onto that 618702 level. If it continues to get resistance here across this structure that Bitcoin has seen across the board there at that $44,000 level, then it may roll back over temporarily and then try to retest and break through it again. And if it can't, then it's going to roll over and then maybe test these lows here. And then that would be the gist of the retracement that we're looking for at the end of the day. The other thing that's interesting too is when you look at this price action on the market, you'll see it across the board in all of the altcoins as well. Ethereum obviously is the major number one major altcoin. Number two in the market altogether. You have Avalanche, Solana, Crypto.com, Matic. All of the popular coins are all looking like the same type of price action as Bitcoin. Everything, the entire market's following the same kind of thing. So the real question is everybody all of a sudden stepping in? We're getting a little bit of some of these altcoins here are starting to retrace that move already. When you go down the list and start looking at them, Mana had a nice little bump. Price action is a little bit different on Mana. But the interesting thing is we're starting to see a little bit of pullback now. So we'll just have to see if these price levels hold. If Bitcoin can break through this level, again, that's major market structural support going all the way back where it was support and resistance along the way of this move. The interesting thing is, as we have noted, that Bitcoin today, especially, let's look at the hourly, has decoupled completely from the stock market. Markets were down largely today, and Bitcoin was up. Markets were down all across the board today. Bitcoin was up, crypto was up. So that's very interesting. Some of the capital could have been coming out of the markets going into cryptocurrency. So the question is that sustainable? Is there going to be a sell-off and then a reversion back into the markets again? So we'll just have to wait and see how that plays out. A couple of people have been asking about gold and what gold is doing. And you can see gold, actually, the price action is following kind of like a cryptocurrency or Bitcoin in the way that has been playing out here lately on the hourly. If you look at the daily, it's been relatively flat. It's kind of up and down, dropping off from its all-time, or its peak here back in July of 2020. It's been kind of downhill. This is gold on the daily. And you can see it's been just kind of bouncing around, ranging sort of sideways in here in that $1,600 to $1,900 range. So we'll have to see what happens with gold. And if you go back and look at this time frame, March of 2020, here's gold right here, March of 2020. It dipped just like everything else. It was straight uphill just like everything else to August 20. And then it's been kind of downhill ever since because a lot of the capital has been flowing into risk assets versus gold, which is more of a stable store of value as perceived by the more institutional investors, larger investors as a whole, just because of the history of gold. It's been kind of on an uphill trajectory since 2015 into recent times, dropped off as the Fed has created a risk-on environment. As risk comes off, more capital will flow into assets like treasuries, golds, things like that, because it's perceived as more of a safe haven, whereas investors right now have Bitcoin and cryptocurrency on the books as risk assets. And again, that's not a bad thing. It's just how they have them labeled right now, just because they are nascent assets, they are emerging technologies in a new space. So what's some of the buzz that's driving the bounce today? It could be a number of different things. Valkyrie Bitcoin miners ETF was approved for NASDAQ listing. That's an ETF that's tracking the miners. So that could have given Bitcoin a little bit of a boost. Crypto fund inflows are at all-time highs as market sentiment picks up. Here recently, inflows into digital asset funds last week were 4.5 times what they were the week before. So a lot of capital has flowed into the space in the last week or so. What's interesting was where it came from. The majority of the inflows come from the Americas. According to CoinShares, Brazil and Canada accounted for 88% of the total inflows last week. So interesting stuff there. KPMG, if you're not familiar with KPMG, one of the largest accounting firms in the world, KPMG Canada has put Bitcoin and Ethereum on its balance sheet into its corporate treasury. So more institutional adoption. MicroStrategy CEO Michael Saylor had a big conference last week with a lot of people in the space to help bring more corporations into Bitcoin. KPMG is a corporation. You can't really consider this like an institution. They are a corporation. So that's what that whole thing was about last week. You can go to MicroStrategy's YouTube channel and you can see that conference where they had a lot of people talking about how to onboard corporations, how corporations can use Bitcoin for treasury, how they can use it for a lot of different aspects of their business, for payments, things like that. So it was a lot of interesting dialogue and discussions with different companies around the world. So that is bringing a lot of capital and a lot of excitement into the space. And then as we can see here, Fidelity, who's been one of the first or was one of the first major investment management firms to really embrace Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, has put out a report in January. Fidelity Digital Assets, they were one of the first wealth management firms, money management firms out there to really embrace digital assets. They put out a big report about Bitcoin and why Bitcoin is the go-to asset, digital asset right now for investors, and why they believe Bitcoin is best understood as a monetary good, things like that. So interesting report there put out by Fidelity. Bullish news and information out there right now on Bitcoin, on Ethereum, and on the cryptocurrency space. So a lot of these things all combined with the fact that Bitcoin has been in this long multi-month downtrend here, multi-week downtrend here without any kind of a real bounce. The biggest bounce that Bitcoin saw, and this is where we have to be careful right now, is that Bitcoin did see a bounce right here of 15% before continuing to the downside. So we've seen these things play out before. This is the strongest bounce yet. We take this second bottom tap here. That's a 20% bounce. So this is the strongest bounce that Bitcoin has seen this entire downtrend cycle that it's been in. I do believe, yes, it has not bounced greater than 15% yet. So the other thing to keep in your back pocket and just be aware of, let's go back to 2017, 2018, the last market cycle high before 64,000. And what do you see here? There's a bounce right there of 37% before downside continuation. Then another bounce right here of 38% before continuation to the downside. Then you have off of a local bottom, there's a bounce of 72% before more continuation to the downside. This bottom here, that dipped 24% before continuation to the downside. So as you can see, in a bear market cycle, Bitcoin has big bounces as it continues into the downtrend into a bear market before it ultimately recovered. And then as we look over here, after the April high, going into the March-April sell-off last year, if you go from wick lows, Bitcoin had a bounce of 44% after the initial drop, and then it bounced in this range a couple of times, 30%. There was a bounce here of 30%, and then it started to settle in a little bit and bounce of 20%. So 15 and 20% bounces are not uncommon as Bitcoin works its way down into a downtrend. And then, as we see, these upswings can be very fast paced as well, and it can gain a lot of ground to the upside very quickly. So those are the things that I'm looking at right now in terms of Bitcoin. We'll see how the rest of the evening unfolds, what the Asia session looks like, if Asia wants to continue to the upside, or if they're going to bring this back down and play in this range again to see if Bitcoin can hold up to this market structure where we're at right now, that $45,000 level, which again was resistance right along this area, that was resistance and support on the previous cycle where Bitcoin tried to clear. Over here, resistance and support, a little bit of a bump up, and then it became support, broke right through it here, little resistance pop there, resistance, then broke through and bounced around in this area. So we're kind of testing that out. So it looks to me like this area here is looking very similar to where we're at here. Obviously the time frame here, this was about a 7-day period. This has been, I don't know how many days has that been so far. That's been about 14 days so far. So Bitcoin's ahead of schedule from the thesis of in January 14th, when I called that bottom of 36,000, when I said Bitcoin would bottom in the 36,000 range. Of course, I didn't know where it was closing out on that day when I measured those percentages based on the death cross happening. And we closed at 35,000, wicked to 33, closed at 35. This could be the second bottoming that we were looking at before continuation. And what we are looking for right now is a little bit of a continuation on to that 618, 702 level, and then continue, it could roll over at that point, or it could continue to the upside at that point. So I think what I'm seeing is that we're going to continue to now test that retracement level to the 0.618 to 702 Fibonacci retracement level to see if we get a rejection or to see if we break through for continuation. And again, I think your market, global macroeconomic environment is going to determine a lot of whether or not we're going to continue. So if the Fed comes out, starts raising rates, the markets react, that's going to be headwind against continuation, especially if inflation persists and we still have rising wages. We still have the things that the Fed perceives as a threat to prices, so that they're going to have to keep interest rates rising to combat inflation. So we'll just have to see where that ends up, and then what the global outlook looks for conflict around the world, things like that. So those are the things that I'm watching. That's what I'm looking for. I will see you on the next video.